Last week I made a video discussing some of the possibilities surrounding Summer Rose and her disappearance, and during that video I said we didn't exactly know that last mission that Summer Rose went on. Now, that's still the case, but I, like many others, am starting to believe that whatever that mission was, whether she intended it to be or not, it resulted in Summer going to face Salem. And I don't think she went to face Salem alone, that she brought other key figures in the RWBY series with her, but not the rest of her team, and didn't tell Ozpin exactly what she was doing. Now, I'm starting to believe this as a lot of people in the comments below that other video pointed to the lyrics of Red Like Roses Part 2 as evidence that Summer Rose went to face Salem and ended up dead. Now, the lyrics don't actually confirm either of those, but it is heavily implied that Summer Rose made a sacrifice. Now, the song itself, the lyrics are sung between RWBY and Summer. RWBY is grieving over the death of her mother, but that's not really confirmation, as RWBY was told by everyone around her that Summer went on a mission and died, so that isn't necessarily confirmation. And Summer's part doesn't really confirm death either, but it does say that Summer went on a mission she intended to return but was not able to. She is lamenting abandoning her daughter and causing her daughter so much pain. And in those lyrics, she says that she made a sacrifice in order to protect RWBY, but failed. That she doesn't want RWBY doing the exact same thing she did and throwing her life away in vain. That now Summer made a sacrifice and a bigger one is forced upon RWBY. That does seem to heavily imply that she did something rash, that she went to go face Salem ill-prepared and failed. Whether that means she was killed, which may have happened, captured, or otherwise, potentially blinded, potentially have amnesia of some sort, or otherwise. Hopefully we will find out soon enough in the RWBY series, but it does seem like she went to face Salem. And as I said, I don't think she went alone. Now, she didn't initially tell Team Stark or Ozpin where exactly she was going, because I think Summer initially intended to go ask something of Jinn, of the Relic of Knowledge, and that was her initial goal. Not to actually fight Salem at that point, just to find out some information. Now, as I mentioned in my previous video, Summer, to go find the Relic of Knowledge, would have to find the Spring Maiden. And in that video, I incorrectly said that, well, depending on how the timelines lined up, it might have been Raven, but that wasn't the case, because Raven inherited the power 7 to 9 years before the current storyline, and Summer's last mission was like 12 to 13 years. So even if Summer took a year or more to go all the way to Mistral, to Haven Academy, find the Spring Maiden, get the relic, etc., the timeline still would have matched up. But she did still find the Spring Maiden. And I think the Spring Maiden at the time went with Summer to face Salem. Because if we look at the Spring Maiden, or at least the inheritance of it so far in the series, Raven's the current Spring Maiden. She got it from a previous Spring Maiden who fled Haven Academy over a decade before the beginning of Volume 5, when Leonardo and Crow had their conversation in Leo's office. So it was over a decade before then. And she fled her duties because she was a fairly new Maiden, eager to accept her responsibilities at the beginning, but then the weight of those responsibilities became a bit too much. So that means that the Maiden powers switched to a new host about, I'd say, 11 to 12 years before the current timeline of the series. Lines up very well with Summer Rose's last mission. It is possible that Summer Rose may have been this Spring Maiden, but I don't think that's the case. I would rather like to think that Summer Rose, as I mentioned in my previous video, was the Fall Maiden, as it would be rather poetic. Summer desperately trying to protect RWBY. Now those powers are in the hands of Cinder Fall, who's targeting RWBY. But I'm also thinking that maybe Summer wasn't a Maiden at all, and that she took the Spring Maiden with her to go face Salem. She asked that last question of Jinn, or the one question of Jinn that has already been used this era, and got an answer that may have forced her hand into go facing Salem currently. Now, this question, we don't know what it was, whether it was something to do with Salem, whether it was like, where is Salem located? Though I'm guessing someone had an idea of where she was located. How do I defeat Salem? Are the Silver Eyes effective against Salem? But I think, because of the lyrics of Red Like Roses, that Summer Rose made a sacrifice, but it seems like it was very hasty or ill-prepared. I think Summer may have asked a question similar to this. How many other silver-eyed warriors are there that have the capabilities to defeat Salem? Now, if it was a question similar to that, like how many silver-eyed warriors are there out there still in existence that can have that effect on Grimm or something like that, and if Jinn gave Summer the answer that the only two silver-eyed warriors left, or the only two that could stand a chance against Salem, are herself and her daughter Ruby Rose, who was currently like 2 or 3 years old at the time, then that would force Summer's hand to go and defeat Salem. If she knew that there was a chance that she could defeat Salem now, she would do it so that burden would not have been forced upon Ruby. But upon going to face Salem, she ended up losing. Whether, again, she was killed, captured, or otherwise, we don't know. But she wasn't able to return home to her daughter, and now that burden of going to face Salem is on Ruby because she is the last capable silver-eyed warrior. That could definitely be the case, and because of this last question, because of Summer's resolve at that point, the Spring Maiden of the time decided to join Summer, and in that final battle lost her life, and thus the powers were transferred to the new Spring Maiden that ended up fleeing Haven Academy, and then eventually passed her powers onto Raven when Raven killed her. We don't exactly know the circumstances around that either, but apparently Mercy was involved. Apparently. Now, we do know that in the series, at least a decade prior to the series, Leonardo Lionheart was on the side of Ozpin, and probably allowed Summer and the Spring Maiden access to the relic because of that one last question, or the one question that they wanted to ask, or something along those lines. I'm guessing Leo hadn't betrayed Ozpin at that point, but upon seeing Summer go to face Salem, upon Leo probably thinking that this is the last chance against Salem, or what have you, when they went to go fight Salem and lost, that's when Leo started seeing Salem as this undefeatable force, something that could not be defeated, so he caved in and joined her side. Whether coerced or confronted, threatened, or otherwise, Leo decided to betray Ozpin after this point. My guess is actually after that Fall Maiden fled Haven Academy. Otherwise, Leo probably would have turned the Maiden over, or Spring Maiden over to Salem. So the timeline, we don't exactly know how it is, but I'm guessing this is how things line up. Now, in my previous video, as I mentioned also previously in this one, I said that it would be very poetic if Summer Rose was the Fall Maiden. Now, we don't know if Summer Rose was a maiden or not, but one way or another, whether it was Summer Rose or someone else, I think the Fall Maiden went along with Summer and the Spring Maiden to go face Salem, because Amber is a fairly young woman. That means that, again, the Fall Maiden powers probably shifted hosts about 10 years prior to the series. We don't know Amber's age. She could be, 25 or less, younger, older. I'm guessing somewhere between 25 and 30. So that would line up if she was like 13 or 14, that the powers were passed to her. Now, if Summer was a maiden and did lose her life, the powers I don't think would have been transferred to the last person she was thinking of, as it probably would have been Ruby or Yang, who would be too young at that point to inherit the powers. The powers themselves are stated to go to a young woman. Now, I'm guessing that wouldn't involve giving the powers to a young child, probably someone who has gone through puberty at least, and not an old woman to inherit the powers, etc. But overall, I do think Summer went with at least the Fall Maiden, the Spring Maiden, and potentially the Summer Maiden as well. Again, that could have been Summer Rose, but the third person or fourth person, if it was not Summer, that Summer was the Silver-Eyed Warrior, along with 3 of the maidens, went to face Salem. We'll find out more, hopefully, when we eventually meet the Summer Maiden, but beyond that, this is just speculation at this point. Now, I don't think Summer had the Winter Maiden with her. We were just introduced to the current Winter Maiden, Freya, who would have been the Winter Maiden at that time that Summer went on that last mission. She's an elderly woman, again, very close to death at this point in the series, so 10 years ago, 12 years ago, she still wouldn't have been a spring chicken. She would have been probably someone in her 50s. I don't exactly know how old she is now. If she's in her 70s, then it would have been like a 60-year-old woman. So still someone probably not capable of making the journey alongside Summer and the other maidens to go face Salem. And Summer's not the type of person to force that decision upon someone, as it would be a fairly hasty decision on Summer's part, etc. So Freya, she may have been approached by Summer Rose and the other maidens to go join them, but wasn't able to for some reason or another. Maybe Summer just wasn't able to find her or what have you. But Freya may know something about this last mission. Thus, maybe at some point in Volume 7 we might get a little bit of Summer Rose backstory if they talk to Freya, but that's a little bit of hopeful thinking on my part. Summer, let's say she went to face Salem with herself, 3 maidens, and maybe other characters with them, but I'm not really sure. This resulted in their loss. We don't know if exactly all the maidens are needed to defeat Salem, but it would certainly help. Whatever the case, Summer was not able to defeat Salem, and the 3 maidens that were with her likely lost their lives. We know for sure Spring did and Fall did. Summer, again, we don't know. But that final battle against Salem was something that set into motion the current timeline. We know that Hazel said previously that we've dealt with their kind before, referring to silver-eyed warriors. Now, we know, of course, Salem is aware that the silver-eyed warriors exist. She had Talk out hunting for them previously. I don't think Hazel was part of Salem's inner circle at the time that Talk was, the time that Talk took out Maria's eyes, because Maria, from when she was young till now as a little old lady, there had to be at least 30 years in the middle of that. Hazel would probably still have been a student at Beacon Academy or previous, earlier than that, younger than that, so I don't think he was a member of Salem's inner circle, and I don't think he dealt with Silver Eyes until Summer Rose. And this final battle against Salem proved to Salem that Silver Eyes could be a threat to her, but maybe weren't as dangerous as she thought, or maybe were as dangerous as she thought, and that's why she's targeting RWBY to get her alive. It could also be that Summer Rose is imprisoned with Salem, and RWBY Rose is going to be used as some other means to extract some information or something from her. One thing I do think became apparent during that battle, though, Salem faced off against the Maidens. Now, this could have been the first time that Salem became aware of the Maidens, because Ozpin, after the Great War, or at least the previous incarnation of Ozma, that was the King of Vale, sealed the relics away in the vaults after the Great War. That's about 80 years prior to the start of the series. So the Maidens were utilized at that point. That is when they became very crucial to finding the relics themselves. And at that point, we don't exactly know when the Maidens were created. For one, it could have been after the Great War. I doubt that's the case. I think it was probably in an older incarnation where Ozpin was shown to be a decrepit old man, and he gave his powers over to 4 young women to, further the growth of humanity and make humanity better for essentially the fairy tale that we have been told. But that is when the Maidens became relevant, by sealing the relics away behind the vaults in each of the academies. So Salem may not have known about the existence of the Maidens at that point. She may have thought that the magic was all contained within Ozpin. So, upon seeing this final battle, upon seeing other people with magic that she probably would have presumed used to be Ozma's, whether she could actually sense that or otherwise, this put something into motion for Salem to develop a way to steal that power. That's why Cinder had the ability to get that beetle in her glove and take the power from Amber. That's why Cinder's grim arm has the ability to steal magic now. Salem spent that decade preparing to start taking the Maiden powers and thus take the relics. She didn't know how to get the relics before that. She didn't know about the Maidens before that. Again, this is all my speculation, but that's still the case. And Salem has been dormant for years, so I think this is what triggered her moving in the current storyline. Now, we don't know what Salem has done in the past. We know that in the first incarnation of Ozma, him and Salem were gods over the world, and had a little bit of a clash that resulted in the death of their entire family and the death of Ozma at that point. But since then, we don't know what Salem has been up to. until, of course, this current timeline. So what has she been biding her time for? Well, I think this is it. Finding a way to get the powers and find access to the relics. I think she did have a hand in the Great War, a war that consumes the entire world of Remnant. It wouldn't make sense that Salem was left out of that, whether she was the initial trigger that started the war to get her hands on the relics eventually. Whatever it may be, she failed in that attempt and was waiting for another chance. And Summer Rose gave that to her, unfortunately, by making the rash decision to protect RWBY. Now, I've been rambling quite a bit throughout this video, so hopefully this all makes sense. I'm not exactly sure how everything lines up, but it does seem that Summer Rose ended up going to face Salem, whether it was the result of the question that she asked Jinn, or whether she initially ended up or went out on that mission aiming to fight Salem. We don't exactly know, but that is likely what ended up happening. I think spring, fall, and maybe summer the Summer Maidens, I should say, went with Summer Rose to fight Salem, and at least spring and fall lost their lives. We don't know for sure if Summer Rose is dead, captured, or otherwise, or what happened to the Summer Maiden. But this battle seems to have taken place and may have sparked the current timeline. So let me know what you guys think. Do my ramblings make sense? Does this timeline match up? Have I missed anything? Which could be the case trying to piece together all of the histories of Remnant that we know so far. So feel free to correct me in the comments below if I'm wrong or missed anything, or if you have anything to add to this theory. I would love to be able to put together a more concrete timeline of the Remnant, the Maidens, and battles that took place to kind of determine different things that have happened. So let me know your thoughts down in the comment below. I really look forward to discussing with all of you. Thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure to subscribe if you want more, subscribe to the channel if you want more RWBY content. And with that, I'll see you guys in the next video.